It had now been 2 weeks since my father's funeral, and life, as always, found a way to keep moving on. The apathetic melancholy had begun to lose its place as the business of the day-to-day presented enough distraction to keep my mind occupied on other things. I was offered a few days after the ceremony to rest and prepare, but I decided to start back in my apprenticeship the day after. Returning to my duties under the order had helped greatly in filling both my time and my thoughts, but my true comfort and strength through it all was my fiancée, Joanna. While many marriages in Xenia are arranged by the parents in order to protect social standings and ensure family security, my relationship with Joanna was one of the rare cases actually formed in love. We had always shared a unique bond due to the fact that we were both children of the Reclamation, so we both understood the private struggles that the other faced. We had known each other since we were children in class together, and even then, I thought that she was breathtaking. As we grew up together, I was able to see not only her outward beauty, but the kindness of her heart and gentleness of her demeanor. She had a warmth about her that drew me in like a fire on a cold night. When we were finally of marrying age, I could hardly contain myself in preparation for my proposal. The joy of hearing her say yes was one of the happiest moments of my life. The excitement of planning our wedding was short-lived, though, as within a few short months, my father's health would start to decline. Throughout these dark months, as things quickly progressed from bad to worse, she was the one that encouraged me to put our wedding plans on hold in order to be there for my mother. Now that season was finally behind us, it felt almost like waking from a coma and realizing that now we could finally start to live again and make plans for our future together. Outside of my relationship with Joanna, my studies as an apprentice priest were ramping up as well. Lord Greelig had chosen myself and a few others to work alongside him in curating the Imperial Library's archives. What sounded like a great honor at first turned out to be hours upon hours of data entry grunt work. We were tasked with going through the library shelf by shelf and manually digitizing every single book line by line. It was mind-numbing and laborious work as we scanned and itemized each page of every book in the lower archives. Of course, Lord Greelig himself was far too busy to actually be in the digital trenches with us. His time was otherwise occupied with meetings, conferences, and lectures in the Great Hall, but we could be sure that his name would be on the top of the list for accommodations when the project was completed. Thankfully, my friend Gyrick Talmarin was there to humor me through the long days of tedious work. He was a true-blood Xenaean from a family of high prestige in the city, and had never known want for anything in his life. A noble heritage was never more ill-fitted to anyone as it was for Gyrick, however, who wore his family name like an itchy sweater that he couldn't wait to tear off. Even though he came from wealth and privilege, his gregarious nature was enough to gloss over his cocky and brash first impressions. At least, for myself anyways. Joanna, however, was not very fond of his company. Nevertheless, I appreciated having him to help the mindless work seem to go by a little bit faster. While we were carefully scanning page after page like studious automatons, Gyrick was going into another of his subversive rants about the futility of our labors. All I'm saying is that if no one has bothered to crack open a single one of these books for the last 40 years, no one is going to be looking them up in the database either. When Greelig said that we had been hand-selected for this crucial assignment, I had at least hoped that we would be overseeing some legislative propositions or maybe even going out to the districts on a unification committee, not risking our health in this dusty old library scanning books. While his position was often exaggerated, his disdain for what everyone else saw as common household informative staple was all too real. In fact, I don't believe Gyrick had ever come into contact with a loathsome book until he started his apprenticeship. He simply had no interest in these relics of the past and was only really concerned in the things that could offer a more pleasurable future. "Come on now, Gyrick," I replied. We all know how offensive this assignment must be for you, but it doesn't need to be this way. I don't know how many times I've offered to tutor you in reading. Ha ha, Z, well struck. Perhaps if I had been afforded the opportunity of growing up in a boring home with no hobbies or girls to distract me, I could have found the joy of reading as easily as you. Sadly, while you were busy becoming a pious scholar, I was busy developing in other areas. Which explains why I am the one engaged to the most beautiful girl in the capital, and you are stuck hoping your parents can find one they can con into marrying you. Oh, my parents won't be conning anyone. That's one of the many luxuries of being incredibly rich and incredibly good-looking. After taking a moment to laugh at his own joke, Garrick suddenly went silent, with a serious look in his eyes that rarely ever appeared. Now that you've brought it up, there is something important that I've been meaning to talk to you about. I was immediately concerned. What is it? It's about Joanna, he paused. You see, she's fallen desperately in love with me. We've been waiting for the right moment to tell you. I punched him stiffly in the shoulder before he could continue, but he was already bursting into laughter again at how hilarious he was. I pulled back to hit him again, but once again he went completely silent. I would have thought he was playing another one of his ridiculous jokes on me, but he had a true look of panic, and his face had gone pale. Looking over my shoulder, he quickly bowed his head and said, Lord Elin. My heart sank as I turned to see the very real figure of the Emperor standing at the entrance of the room. Gentlemen, I'm sorry to hear of the relational strife you are experiencing. My condolences, Zatan. It seems your betrothed has chosen... He paused and fixed his gaze on Gyrick, who was now frozen with fear. A moron. My lord, Gyrick began, we were just, making fools of yourselves. Lord Eland's face was stern, his eyes piercing. His hard stare felt as if it would burn a hole through each of us, and for a moment my mind was racing to find an explanation that would not end in a public reprimand. But then the Emperor's hard expression began to crack. I can't help it. The Emperor began to laugh. I'm sorry, boys. I heard you cutting into each other from out in the hall, and I had to come in and have some fun of my own. Gyrick began to laugh along in the most obviously forced and uncomfortable way he could. Ha! You had us going there, sir. I was still full of nerves, and apparently, even though I had managed to force a smile of my own, my discomfort was plain on my face. Relax, Zatan. No one's in any trouble today. I know all you guys can see is the Emperor of Xenia, but it was not that long ago that I was a young man known to have a laugh with his friends. I understand. In fact, I wish sometimes that I could have a bit more of this and a lot less of the meetings and bureaucracy. Enjoy this freedom while it's yours, gentlemen. Thank you, sir, we muttered in unison. The Emperor smiled and nodded in reply, and then continued. Anyways, our jovial little conversation today did not happen by chance. I actually came to see you, Zeton. Me, sir? Yes. He then turned towards Gyrick as if searching for his name. Gyrick Talmarin, my lord. Gyrick, of course. Gyrick. I'm sure you can manage the, books for a few moments while I borrow your accomplice. Certainly, my lord. I followed the Emperor out of our workroom and into the main hall. I hadn't noticed his guards standing just outside of the door, but now I could feel their presence like a weight on my shoulders. As we approached a nearby balcony overlooking the main pavilion of the library, the Emperor started to speak. I've been thinking a lot recently about our people, our world, our future, and your place in it. After the funeral, I didn't really expect to hear personally from the Emperor again. To find out that he had actually been including me in whatever plans he had for the future came as quite a shock. I don't mean to be disrespectful, sir. Speak freely, son. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your words at the service, and I'm humbled that you would consider me at all, but honestly, sir, I'm nothing like my father. I know he was your friend, but your father was a complicated man, as all men are. Yes, he was my friend, but I can readily admit that he had many flaws. As good of a man as he was, I'm not interested in you because I want you to step in and fill your father's shoes. He turned and looked me dead in the eyes. I'm very interested in you filling your own. But you don't even know me. I know you probably better than you know yourself. I told you before, I've had my eye on you for quite some time. Ever since that day I first held you, the day we ended that bloody war, I've always known that you could be the key to lasting peace and unity throughout the districts. Elin now turned his gaze. He was overlooking the pavilion once again, but I could see that his mind was seeing beyond the walls of the library, even the great walls surrounding the city, to some distant place in another time. We are well insulated here in the capital, but the outlier colonies are unsettled once again. Every step towards peace that we have taken is at a foothold of sand. The foundation we stand on is collapsing beneath us, and if we don't act soon, there are those in the outlier districts who would rise up in rebellion against us. I've lived through one war, Zitan. I never want to see another one. My mind was scrambling to try to make sense of what he was telling me. I knew that there were some in the outer districts that held a certain disdain towards the capital, but I hadn't really considered the possibility of war. Obviously, sir, I'm as opposed to another war as the next guy, but I don't see what I can do to stop one. I'm just an apprentice priest. I'm not even a true Zanaean. I was a child of the Reclamation. I don't even feel like I belong here most of the time, much less doing whatever it is you want me to do. It is precisely because you are a child of the Reclamation that makes you perfectly suited for what I'm going to ask you. You weren't born in Xenia, but you are of Xenia. You are a bridge, a model of what could be. It's hard for people to see the future, but you are a shining example of what a truly united people would look like. The Emperor continued. I want you to be my ambassador, Zitan. I want you to be the face of the capital and the districts. They can't buy into me. Despite my efforts, I am the picture of elitism that they despise, but you are one of them. You can show everyone that it's not us and them, but we are all one. If you can do it, so can they. And then, putting his hand on my shoulder, he said, we will have true peace. After the Emperor left, the rest of the day was really a blur. Gyrick asked me what we were talking about, but I was still putting it together myself. At the start of the day, I was an apprentice priest assigned to a meaningless chore, but now I'd been asked by the Emperor himself to be his ambassador to all of the outer districts. With a wedding coming soon and a new life to start building, this could have been the perfect opportunity. I couldn't wait until the following night so that I could tell Joanna when we went out to dinner. That night, as I slept, I had a strange dream. I dreamed I was walking into a cave, high up in the mountains. I could hardly see anything except a dim, flickering light at the far end of the tunnel. The way the flame moved, it almost seemed like it was beckoning me to come closer. As I began to step towards the light, it immediately began to grow bigger and brighter until it was completely surrounding me, and then as quickly as it had engulfed me, it vanished, and I was left in darkness. Then I heard a voice so loud that it jolted me from my sleep, even though it had to have been the last remnant of the dream. I shot up and was now sitting fully awake in my bed with those words ringing like an echo in my head. Find me.